Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and you'll never miss a story again. She thought she was upgrading when she left me for her married boss, calling me boring and predictable. I didn't argue, just let her walk away and silently rebuilt my life from scratch. Years later, she showed up broke, alone, and begging for another chance. What happened next left her absolutely speechless, and you'll want to see every second until the very end. I can still remember the exact moment it started. Not the affair, but the slow, creeping sense that something in my marriage had shifted. We were sitting in our living room on a quiet Sunday evening. I'd made dinner, her favorite, chicken piccata, and we were halfway through a movie. Out of nowhere, she put her fork down, looked at me and said, "You know, sometimes I think you're just too boring, too predictable." At first I laughed, thinking it was a joke. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 6, and in all that time we'd prided ourselves on stability. Predictability to me meant safety, consistency, trust. But the look in her eyes that night wasn't playful. It was calculating, almost rehearsed. I don't know," she continued, swirling her wine. "I feel like there's more to life, more excitement, more passion. Don't you ever feel like you're just coasting?" I tried to brush it off, but something about the way she said more passion stuck with me. I knew she'd been working late more often, claiming big projects, end-of-quarter deadlines. She'd also started dressing differently for work. Not in an over-the-top way, but there was definitely more attention to detail, more perfume, more subtle glamour. Looking back, I realized I'd been in denial. I wanted to believe she was just going through a phase, craving change, maybe a new hobby or a vacation. But the truth was so much uglier. About 2 months after that conversation, she dropped the bomb. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She wasn't even making eye contact. "I'm leaving," she said plainly. "I've met someone else. And before you ask, yes, I've been seeing him for a while." It felt like someone had shoved a knife into my chest. My mind couldn't catch up with her words. "He's my boss," she continued. "He understands me in ways you never have. He's ambitious, exciting, spontaneous. Honestly, I think I've outgrown us. You're just comfortable, predictable, and I want more." She said it as if she were reciting a list she'd been rehearsing for weeks. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw something. But instead, I just sat there, breathing slowly. I don't know if it was shock or some instinct for self-preservation, but I stayed calm. "So that's it?" I asked quietly. "That's it," she replied, finally looking at me. "I'm sorry, but I'm not happy, and I can't live my life wondering what I'm missing out on." I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I didn't demand she reconsider. I simply stood up, walked to our bedroom, and began packing a bag. Not for me, for her. She was startled. "What are you doing?" "Making it easier for you," I said flatly. "If you're leaving, then leave. No drama, no games, just go." Her lips parted slightly, like she'd expected a fight, maybe even wanted one. But I gave her nothing. By the end of the night, she was gone. I sat in the quiet house, staring at the half-empty wine glass she'd left on the table. My phone buzzed. A text from her that simply said, "You'll thank me one day." I didn't respond. The first few weeks were the hardest. I went through all the phases: disbelief, anger, bitterness. I replayed our conversations in my head, trying to pinpoint where I'd failed, where the cracks had started. But as time passed, something shifted. I realized I hadn't failed. I'd been faithful, supportive, and committed. She hadn't left because I was lacking. She'd left because she wanted something shiny and new, convinced it would make her happier. So I made a decision. I wouldn't try to win her back, and I wouldn't waste my energy hating her. I'd focus on me. I started small. I hit the gym not to impress anyone, but to rebuild my confidence. I picked up old hobbies I'd neglected: photography, hiking, cooking elaborate meals just for myself. I even took a solo trip to the coast, where I spent hours walking along the shoreline, letting the salt air clear my head. Work became another outlet. I threw myself into new projects, learned skills I'd been putting off, and within a year, I'd landed a promotion. My income grew. My circle of friends expanded, and I started feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride in myself. Meanwhile, I heard bits and pieces about her life. Mutual friends, not knowing I didn't want updates, would casually mention things. She and her boss had gone public with their relationship. She posted pictures of extravagant dinners, weekend getaways, and expensive gifts. But then, almost as quickly as the honeymoon phase began, the cracks started to show. Rumors circulated, arguments in public, him canceling plans, her showing up to events alone. Eventually, someone told me he was still very much married, and his wife had begun divorce proceedings. By the 18-month mark, the relationship that was supposed to be her grand upgrade had imploded. She'd moved out of his penthouse and was living in a small apartment on the other side of town. That's when the first message came. It was short. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, then put my phone down. I didn't reply. 2 weeks later, another message. "I made a mistake. I miss you." Again, I ignored it. It wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. She'd made her choice, and I'd built a life without her. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of her attempts to come back. And when she finally showed up at my door, what happened next would be the moment I knew I'd truly moved on. 2 months after her second text, there was a knock at my door. It was a Saturday morning, and I'd just come back from my run. I was sweaty, still catching my breath, and not in the mood for company. When I opened the door, there she was, hair slightly messy, makeup smudged, wearing a sweatshirt I vaguely recognized as one she'd borrowed from me years ago. "Hi," she said softly, almost like she wasn't sure if she should be there. I just stood there, leaning against the door frame. "What do you want?" I just wanted to see you," she stammered. "To talk. Please." I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. She shifted from foot to foot. "I know you probably hate me. I know I messed up, but I miss you. I miss us. Things didn't work out the way I thought they would." I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch. Finally, she sighed. "It wasn't what I expected. He's not the man I thought he was. He lied to me, used me, and when things got hard, he threw me away." I almost laughed, but not because it was funny, more because it was so painfully predictable. "I thought you'd be happy to see me," she added quietly. "Happy?" I repeated. "You walked out. You told me I was boring and predictable, that you wanted more. So you got more. More lies, more disappointment, more heartbreak. That was your choice." She flinched, but she didn't argue. "I know," she said finally. "And I regret it. I thought maybe we could start over." I shook my head. "There's no starting over. That's not how this works. You burned the bridge and salted the earth. There's nothing left to rebuild." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't soften. Not this time. "I'm not the man you left," I continued. "I've built something without you, a life I'm proud of, and you don't get to walk back in just because yours fell apart." She opened her mouth like she wanted to protest, but I'd already stepped back toward my door. "Take care of yourself," I said flatly, and then I went inside. I leaned against the closed door for a moment, listening to her footsteps fade away. That was the first of several visits. Over the next few months, she found excuses to accidentally run into me, at the grocery store, at the coffee shop near my office, even once at the gym. Each time, the conversations were the same. Her telling me she'd changed, her promising she was different, me telling her that my life had no space for her anymore. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward. Work was going well. I'd taken on a leadership role that came with more responsibility and a much higher salary. I'd bought a small but beautiful house closer to the mountains, a place with big windows and a quiet view that I loved waking up to every morning. I'd also started seeing someone. Her name was Claire. We met at a photography workshop, and from our first conversation, it felt easy. No games, no hidden agendas, just two people enjoying each other's company. We started hiking together on weekends, cooking meals at home, exploring new places in the city. It was steady, it was kind, and it was exactly what I wanted. I didn't flaunt the relationship, but word got around. Mutual friends who still talked to my ex mentioned it to her, and I could tell by the sudden edge in her texts that it bothered her. One night she showed up at my house unannounced again. "I hear you're seeing someone," she said, her voice tight. "I am," I replied. "Already? After everything we had?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean after you left me for your married boss?" She winced. "That's not fair." "No," I interrupted. "What's not fair is you thinking you can walk back into my life like nothing happened. What's not fair is you deciding I wasn't enough, then getting angry when I moved on." Her expression hardened. "You've changed." "I have," I said simply. "And I'm not going back." After that, she stopped showing up for a while. But the messages didn't stop. They became more desperate. Long paragraphs about how she couldn't sleep, how she'd realized too late what she'd lost, how she knew she didn't deserve another chance, but couldn't help hoping for one. I read them, then deleted them without responding. The real turning point came 6 months later, at a mutual friend's party. I hadn't planned on seeing her there, but as soon as I walked in, I spotted her across the room. She looked different, thinner, more tired, like the last year had aged her twice as fast. She saw me, too, and within minutes she was making her way over. "I just want to say," she began, "that I'm sorry for everything. I ruined the best thing I ever had, and I know you don't owe me anything, but I hope one day you can forgive me." There was sincerity in her voice this time, and maybe a year earlier I would have felt a pang of sympathy. But now I just felt free. "I already forgave you," I said. "Not for you, for me. So I could move on. And I have. You should too." She blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. "So, that's it?" "That's it." I left the party early, not because of her, but because Claire and I had plans. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw my ex standing alone, looking lost in the crowd. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not exactly. It was more like closure. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine, and mine had led me to a place where her opinion, her approval, and her presence no longer mattered. What I didn't know was that her final attempt to win me back was still ahead of me. And when it came, it would be the moment I realized just how priceless moving on truly was. 3 months passed after that party, and I'd honestly started to forget about her. Not in a way that erased our history. You don't just erase years with a person, but in a way where she was no longer part of my day-to-day thoughts. Claire and I had settled into a rhythm that felt natural. We'd taken a short trip to the coast, were planning another hiking weekend, and she'd even started to help me redecorate my living room. Life was good, peaceful. Then, one Friday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call came from the same number. This time I answered, thinking maybe it was work-related. It wasn't. "Hi, it's me." I didn't say anything right away. She rushed on. "Please don't hang up. I really need to talk to you. It's important." Against my better judgment, I asked, "What is it?" She hesitated. "Can we meet? Somewhere quiet, just for a few minutes." Something in her tone told me it wasn't just another plea to try again. She sounded nervous, almost scared. We met at a small park near the edge of town. She was already there, sitting on a bench, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. When I sat down, she pushed them up and I saw it. Her eyes were puffy, red from crying. "I lost my job," she said flatly. "My boss's wife found out about us. Everything. He denied it at first, then turned it all on me. HR fired me for violating company policy." I didn't respond. "And it's worse," she continued, her voice shaking. He told people I was unstable, that I made it all up. No one will hire me. My lease is up next month. I don't know what to do." I could feel where this was going. "I need help," she whispered. "Just a loan. Enough to get me back on my feet. I'll pay you back, I promise." It was almost surreal. This was the same woman who'd once told me I wasn't enough for her, who'd left me without looking back. And now she was sitting here asking for my help because the man she'd chosen instead had destroyed her life. I took a deep breath. "I'm not your safety net," I said evenly. "When you left, you made it clear you didn't need me. I believed you. And I moved on." Her lip trembled. "I know. but I have no one else." "That's not my problem," I replied. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. "You've changed." "Good," I said. I stood up, and for a second she reached out like she might grab my arm, but then she dropped her hand. I walked away without looking back. It should have ended there, but it didn't. 2 weeks later, Claire and I hosted a small dinner at my place. Just a few close friends, some wine, and a lot of laughter. In the middle of dessert, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my ex standing there, holding a photo album. "I thought you might want these back," she said. I didn't invite her in. "Leave them," I told her. She glanced over my shoulder and saw Claire. Her expression hardened. "Is this her, the reason you can't even talk to me like a human being?" I almost laughed at the irony. "The reason," I said, "is that I learned my worth, and I don't waste it on people who threw it away." I closed the door. Claire asked who it was, and I told her. She didn't press. She just squeezed my hand and smiled. That calm, steady smile that reminded me every day I'd made the right choice. But the real ending came a month later. I was cleaning out my email inbox when I saw a message from an unknown sender. It was from her. The subject line read, "I'm leaving." In the email, she explained she was moving to another state to live with a cousin. She couldn't find steady work, her social circle had evaporated, and she wanted a fresh start. She ended by saying she hoped one day I'd think of her without anger. I stared at the screen for a long time, and then I realized I already did. There was no anger left, no bitterness. Just the knowledge that I'd survived something that once felt like it would break me. And not only had I survived, I'd built something better. That night, Claire and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt that deep, quiet contentment I used to think was impossible. Somewhere out there, my ex was starting over, and so was I. The difference was, my life wasn't about running from mistakes. It was about building towards something worth keeping, and that I realized was the best revenge of all. 3 years passed. By then, Claire and I were married, living in a cozy home just outside the city. Life had taken on a steady rhythm. Work, dinners with friends, spontaneous weekend trips. The chaos of my past felt like another lifetime. One Saturday afternoon, Claire and I were strolling through a farmer's market downtown. The air smelled of fresh bread and coffee, and a street musician played guitar somewhere nearby. We were halfway through picking out vegetables when I heard someone say my name. I turned. It was her. She looked different, thinner, paler, lines etched deeper into her face. She was holding a paper bag with just a loaf of bread inside. "Hey," she said softly. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then I nodded. "Hi." Claire, sensing the tension, gave my hand a gentle squeeze and wandered toward another stall to give us space. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said. "I moved back last month. Things didn't work out where I was." Her eyes dropped to the ground. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry. For everything. I was stupid. I thought I was chasing something better. But it turns out I was just throwing away the best thing I had." I listened, but there was no rush of anger or satisfaction, just a calm detachment. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. She looked up, a flicker of hope in her expression. "Do you ever think we could—" "No," I said gently but firmly. "That chapter's closed. I've moved on, and I'm happy." Her face fell, but she nodded slowly, as if she'd been expecting that answer. "I hope you find happiness too," I added. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Claire returned, slipping her arm through mine. "Old friend?" she asked lightly. "Old life," I said. We bought the rest of our groceries, walked back to the car, and headed home. On the drive, I felt a strange sense of finality. Not triumph, not bitterness, just closure. The truth was, she had been right about one thing back then. I had been predictable. I'd gone to work, come home, loved her, and built a steady life. But she saw that as boring. Now I realized, predictability isn't a flaw when you're building something real. It's the foundation that keeps it standing. And as Claire and I unpacked groceries in our warm kitchen, laughter filling the air, I knew I'd finally built my life on the right foundation. With the right person. The past was over, the door was shut, and for the first time I didn't even care to look back.